I think one of the things that we found out, the more we get together, the happier we are. We need to consider ourselves a fellowship. We have the same motive. We have the same motivator. We're carrying out the same action. We're going to begin with the song. Ask that if you would stand up. We're going to sing Leaning on the Everlasting Arm. Amen? Amen. What a fellowship, what a peace is mine, leaning on the everlasting arm. What a peace is mine, leaning on the everlasting arm. Oh, well, I'm leaning on Jesus Christ, my Savior, safe and secure from all alarms. Leaning on Jesus Christ, my Savior, leaning on the everlasting arm. Y'all sit down before I really mess up the words.
Good afternoon. Are you glad you're here? Welcome to our Faith and Families Rally. We are happy that you're a part of this great and historic event. I am Doyle Sager, and I am pastor of First Baptist Church here in Jefferson City, a member congregation of Faith Voices for Jefferson City. We are here today to clarify the moral imperatives of our faith. Our faith tells us that creation is broken and God is not happy. God is not happy and we're not happy. God longs for His creation to be healed. And the healing of our land will only come when dignity is granted to every child of God in Missouri. Economic dignity and racial equity are not favors we are seeking. They are the rights we are claiming. Rights we are claiming. Rights that belong to all of God's children. The moral imperatives of our faith call us to a larger conversation than the schemes of political divisions. We're done with the simplistic, binary, either-or answers of politicians, urban or rural, rich or poor, labor or management, black or white, Republican or Democrat. We are here to announce that we will no longer take the bait. We will no longer be divided along these lines. We are uniting around human dignity. That's not partisan. That's God's way. We're uniting around relieving suffering. That's not partisan. That's biblical. We're uniting around empowering individuals with opportunities. That's not partisan. That's Missouri at its best. And we are uniting around God's loving plan for justice for everybody. That is not partisan. That is the way God intended creation. And one more thing. You know why else we're here today? We're here to remind elected officials that they work for us. And so we're here today as supervisors just walking around seeing how our employees are doing. We're just supervising our employees today. And I have a message for our employees. Some of our elected officials haven't been doing so well. Some of them need to learn to listen. of them need to show up and do God's work. Do your job, elected officials. Do what God would have you do and what we sent you here to do. It's springtime in Missouri. Let's join together in planting a flourishing democracy. And let God's creation be healed. God bless you.
Good afternoon. My name is Heather MacArthur. I'm from Metropolitan Congregations United in St. Louis. This is my second trip to Jefferson City this year. And every time I come, I'm sure I feel a bit like you do. You've rushed all over this building. You've had 10-second conversations here. You might have pulled someone off the floor there. Sometimes some people are rude to you. Sometimes they're not. You can have good conversations too. But sometimes you begin to wonder, what brought me here? Did I really do any good? Did I make a difference? A week ago, I shared a reflection at our executive committee meeting in St. Louis, and I based it on what I feel sometimes when I come here. We have called this our Fire of Faith trip to Jefferson City. And I talked about the story of, if you're familiar with it, Elijah and the prophets of Baal. If you want to look it up later, it's First Book of Kings, chapter 18. But the kingdom of Israel had been ruled by one after another, worse and worse ruler. And the people of God were really in hiding. If they hadn't been killed, the prophets were hiding in caves. Elijah himself was exiled. But he was told by God to go and confront Ahab and the prophets of Baal. And you know the story. You probably know it quite well. There was a showdown between the two groups. Basically, the 450 prophets of Baal set up their altar and called on Baal to set fire to their offering, and nothing happened for hours and hours. And Elijah had the altar soaked with water, and the fire of God came down and consumed everything, proving who really was in control. And I use that story not lightly, because sometimes when we come here, it feels a bit like we're one prophet of God and 450 prophets of Baal. But just remember that there is only one true God. So when I think about why I come here and why I support Medicaid expansion, I have to get out of my head and into my heart. And I draw upon the fact that not everyone is affected directly by the lack of expansion of Medicaid in Missouri. And when I mean directly is, we don't think we are. We actually all are. But it's making that move from what becomes I think it's a great idea, expand Medicaid in Missouri, why not, to what does it really mean for people who are in that situation? And although we may not all have a direct impact by Medicaid expansion, we all will run into health concerns at some point or other in our families or personally. And for me, if you've listened to me this long, you know that I'm not from St. Louis originally. The principles of healthcare for all were settled for me and my country of birth 60 years ago with the foundation of the National Health Service in the United Kingdom. But I now have family on both sides of the Atlantic. And over the last 4 years, we've been impacted by health concerns. I have an 8-year-old niece in Edinburgh in Scotland who's 2 years into treatment for leukemia. As traumatic as that is for her parents, not once have they had to worry about how they're going to afford that treatment. My niece, who is in California, was diagnosed with lupus 2 years ago before she graduated from UCLA. Her parents are very thankful that not only could they add her to their health insurance policy, but she will not have a pre-existing condition following her about for the rest of her life. That's great. But there are almost 300,000 people in Missouri for for whom that is not a reality. And they are just as precious in the sight of God as me and my family are. And they deserve the same treatment by our state. So that's why I come down here. That's why I've been down here twice to talk to legislators about expanding Medicaid in Missouri. And the other part of this is I also think that public education is so important. I read a piece yesterday in the newspaper that reiterated that John Adams and Thomas Jefferson believed that public education was so important for the future of the Republic of the United States. They didn't think a child should live within over 1 mile from a public school. We have undermined our public education in the state of Missouri, and we need equity in funding for education for all our children, so that all may participate in our democracy and our economic economy. So that's what brings me here, and that's why, even though I feel exhausted after running about all over this building, I will be back again through this session to let our legislators know to listen to what we're saying. We're not asking for a handout, but we are asking for an equitable chance in this state. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vernon Howard, and I serve as senior pastor at the Second Baptist Church of Kansas City, Missouri, and as executive vice president for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference of Greater Kansas City. Also in alliance with CCO of Kansas City and with Missouri Faith Voices. And I think we ought to give ourselves a hand Today we assemble in this rotunda with a phrase within our hearts that seems to have lost the imagination of the Missouri legislature. That phrase is written in Latin everywhere in this building. And it is to remind all of those who govern in this great state that the welfare of the people ought always be the supreme law in this place. We come then as Missouri Faith Voices. We are prophetic voices. We have moral conviction. And we have passion for the weak and the vulnerable. We speak on behalf of those who do not have a voice in Jefferson City. We speak for the voices of those who cry out in pain and misery in Springfield, Missouri, and Columbia, Missouri, in Jefferson City, Missouri, in St. Louis, Missouri, and in Kansas City, Missouri. We are here to move the principles of justice and dignity to the center of public life. In essence, we have come here to shift the balance of power in the state of Missouri. Look at your neighbor and say, shift. They desire, as my brothers declared, to entangle us into the political traps of black versus white, Democrat versus Republican, urban versus rural, Protestant versus Catholic, conservative versus liberal, radical versus progressive, PhD versus GED. But we did not come here to choose sides. We came here to humbly proclaim and do what is just, what is good, what is moral, what is merciful, what is pleasing in the sight of God. We came here to do what is right for Missouri. We do know, in light of what is right, what is wrong. We do know that institutional poverty and raising the livable wage from $7 to $10 only moves someone from one level of poverty to the next. We must eradicate the whole language of minimum wage and move our narrative to a livable wage, where everybody who's willing to work has a decent wage that they can live on, whether they are in Moberly or Kansas City, whether they are in Springfield or St. Louis. All of Missouri citizens should have a livable wage that they earn if they're willing to work. It has been said, and we will say it again, dignity means that every citizen in Missouri should have the right of health care, even the poorest of citizens, through the expansion of Medicaid right here in Jefferson City, Missouri. In addition, fully funding our public schools from the northern tip of the state to the southern tip, from the eastern side to the western side, is the indication that we will have become a more moral Missouri as we fund public schools for poor children and all of those across our state. Now, we know that the political elite and moneyed interest rule many of the votes of those in the Missouri legislature.